today's webinar is going to be over the North Carolina NIBRS, North Carolina NIBRS. And that is going to be for the certification process for your department, then going into the code setup, so setting up your codes, your crime codes, location codes, and all that, so that then what your officer puts into a case report will be able to import in to the NIBRS review that you fill out. So it'll be case report data entry, and then how that relates to NIBRS review data entry. And then finally getting your file for submission. So first thing is going to be the certification process. For North Carolina, right now, I believe it is going to be 3 months of data submissions. So some departments or some states vary on that. And many states, I think with FBI NIBRS, is going to be 6 months of data entry. So you're kind of lucky in that sense where you only have to do 3 months of data entry. And that can be the next 3 months from when we start the project. So it could be, you know, if we started the project in July, then you could do your month for July, August, and September. Generally, though, we're a little bit quicker than that, or departments are usually a little bit quicker than that putting in data entry. So you'd be able to do probably May, June, and July, and go through those months instead. And that way, it doesn't really matter. They just need 3 consecutive months of data. And usually you want it to be kind of in the past, but recent months of data. So that's what we would usually suggest. If you started in July, we would say, go ahead and put in May, June, and July. And those files, we would help you get the codes and stuff set up, and then you would put in the data entry. We would help with that as well. Then whenever you get your file, we'll help you submit that to the state. They'll check it and send it back. If there's any errors with it, then we'll help to fix those, and you can send that back again, and then they'll check it, and once they approve it, then you'll move on to that next month. And so you do that 3 times, and after your 3rd month, you are certified and can go ahead and start just reporting NIBRS. Okay, so that is the basics of the certification process. And again, we go into it more, or we go into it specifically for your department whenever we begin the project. But after we kind of set up the dates that we want to do, we go into the NIBRS code setup. So we'll jump into the ARM system right now and look at that part of it. So we'll start with go into the setup menu. And then the first one, the big one, is going to be your crime codes, obviously. So if we come over to crime and incident codes, this will be the first place that we set up. So we'll do these aggravated assaults. So if we come into ag assault right here, the 2 main ones, and this is going to be your codes. So the codes that are in your system, that's what you'll be editing to make it so that you can report NIBRS from those codes. So first thing that you would need to do is choose the UCR offense code for that specific crime code. Now we have lists online, and we provide you lists that tell you specifically what code and what crime against your crime codes are going to be. So for this one, you've got aggravated assault, and that's just the NIBRS aggravated assault. That's all they care about, is if it's an aggravated assault. That will be a 13A. So it doesn't matter if you have aggravated assault with a firearm, with a cutting instrument, or anything like that. UCR offense for NIBRS is always going to be 13A for an aggravated assault. Then down here, you've got 3 different crime types: crime against person, crime against property, and crime against society. So crime against person, that would be like an aggravated assault, a simple assault, something like that. Crime against property would be a theft or a vandalism or burglary or something like that. And then a crime against society would be something like a drug paraphernalia, drug narcotics charge, where they were caught with drugs. So there's not necessarily a victim, and so it would be a crime against society in that fact. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. You know that an aggravated assault is going to be a crime against a person. But for those that aren't so obvious, we do have documentation that goes through all of the different UCR offense codes and what crime codes need to have those on there. So you would just go through any of your crime codes that are reportable and put in the UCR offense code and what crime against it is. Other than that, though, there's nothing else that you need to do with this crime code. So we'll save that, and we'll go into the next part of setup. So in here, we'll go up to GeoFile right there. That's going to be the next one. So we've done our crime codes. We need to look at locations now. So let's go to Parkwood Hall right here. And for North Carolina, there's a little bit of a difference here from other states. The one that's the same is this NIBRS address type. So you would come to your GeoFile, your location, and choose what address type this location is. So for this one, I've got it marked as 52 school, college, or university, but you can go through and choose which one is in here. And then the other thing that North Carolina customers do have to do is mark a county in their GeoFile. That's pretty easy because most of the time the county is going to be the same for everything. But as long as you have that county in there, they do require that information. All right. Then once you've got the information in here, so NIBRS address type and county, we'll hit save, and we'll go back to setup. And the last thing we want to look at for this code setup is going to be the property. So if we come to code list right here and go to category, and then go down to property and evidence, and then subcategory property type. So these property types, I've actually already got mine set up to match what NIBRS expects. But for your department, if you have property types in here that don't match up with NIBRS, so say I had sweaters or something like that in the property type, you would go to that code and you would have whatever you want for your description right here. So whatever the officers are used to seeing, you can have that in the description right there. And then down below that, you can come in and choose what to map that to for whenever you're pulling it into NIBRS. So if this was sweaters, I would map it to clothes and furs so that it would just pull that in. Same thing with a lot of these with like bicycles. You'll see that it maps straight to bicycles. So you would just need to find the one in here that it matches. You'll notice a lot of this NIBRS information are codes. So everything's going to have a code associated to it because NIBRS just puts it into kind of a checker and it checks the codes to see if all of them line up correctly. All right, so that is it for the setup. Those are the three main ones. There are some smaller ones that we'll talk about in a second when we're doing the case data entry, but those are so small that they take like 5 minutes to set up, so nothing really big at all. All right, so if we come to our first case, you can see we've got 3 cases up here at the top, and those are going to be what we're looking at today. The first one is a simple assault and a vandalism. So this one is going to be a larceny theft, and then this one's going to be a narcotic and drug paraphernalia charge. So we'll come to this one first, and just going down the segments over here, we're going to look at what information we'll import into NIBRS for this specific one. So in here, the only one on the face page is going to be this location. So you can see I've got the common name and the county. So it's going to pull that county, and this Parkwood Hall was school, college, university, so it's going to pull in that 52 code. Then over here, I've got a simple assault and a destroying public property. So these are already set up on the back end that we just went over. So simple assault set up with a 13B, and then destroying public property set up with a 290 code. So those are already set up. We'll come into names right here. And we've got the Mary Markison as our complainant and victim, and Marcus Marison as our arrested person. So you can see the involvement type right here will actually pull in too. If someone's marked as a victim, they'll pull into NIBRS as a victim. And then if someone's marked as a suspect or an arrested person, then they'll pull into NIBRS as the offender for the NIBRS review. So that saves you a lot of time. It also pulls in their age, race, sex, and ethnicity. All right, and then down below you can see you can also add a couple more things to that person if you want to add the victim type or put what UCR offense codes they were connected to. You can do that, and I'll show you that in just a second. Or actually, for this one, I don't want to show you that because I want to show you what it looks like when you add it in through the NIBRS review, and then I'll show you what it looks like whenever it's already added. And then also for arrested person, you can see we've got an arrest on here. That's going to pull in for that person as well. All right, and we'll come down to the properties right here. And this is, since this was a simple assault and a vandalism, we've got a damaged property here. If I click edit to show you guys what it looks like, we've got the property category of damaged. And then if we come down here, we've got damaged. And then a property type of bicycles, which I already showed you. This maps down to UCR NIBRS for bicycles. And the last thing that the officer would need to add is just a value. All right, we'll save that. So that's all we need to look at that'll import into the NIBRS side. So let's actually look at the NIBRS side. So we've got NIBRS tab right here. We'll click Start New Review. And this first page right here, you've got the incident number, so just the case number, the date, cleared exceptionally with the list right here. So if it was cleared in any of these ways, you would put in the exceptional clearance date right there. The county pulls in based on what the officer put on the face page. And then you've got the cargo theft option right here. Cargo theft is only going to apply to thefts. So there's only certain codes that it can be checked yes or no for. Since this is a simple assault and a vandalism, neither of those apply, so we would leave it as NA. If I tried to change that and put this as no and hit save, it'll actually let me know cargo theft must be NA if none of the UCR offense codes are any of these codes. Remember I showed you aggravated assault is a 13A, so simple assault is a 13B, and a vandalism is a 290. Neither of those are in this list for ones that you can put something other than NA. So if we change that back, we'll hit save, and there we go. Now we'll go down to our next one, and we've got the offense segment right here. So once we get to that offense segment, we can choose which one we want to look at. I'm going to choose the simple assault first because there's some data that we do need to add to this one. So this one, there's not much that we have to do, but I am going to go through and show you and explain each of the different fields, just so you know. You've got the UCR offense code right here, 13B, like I said, the simple assault, and I just got rid of it. Let me put that back in. So that imported from the case. Location type of school, university, that imported from the case. Bias motivation is always going to default to no bias. If there is a bias, you can put it in there. But for the most part, what we see is the no bias. All right. And then down here, offense was completed or attempted. For the most part, this is only used for thefts. So if the theft was attempted and nothing was actually stolen, then you would put that there. And when you're putting in property, you can't put in a stolen property because you put attempted, so nothing was stolen. And then kind of the same thing, completed, whenever you go to the property, you have to put a stolen property. So if you basically have to make sure that to put here whether it was completed or attempted, because that is going to depend on what you can add to this property section over here. All right, so this was completed. I mean, this is a simple assault, so that's fine. And then over here, you've got method of entry and number of premises entered. Those go hand in hand. Method of entry is only going to be allowed if you have a burglary right here. So if you have a burglary code in your UCR offense code, you would put N or F, and that's going to be forcible and non-forcible for method of entry. And then even deeper than that, number of premises entered is pretty not commonly used, I guess, because it's going to be able to use this field and put the number of premises entered, your UCR offense code has to be a burglary, and then your location type has to be either a hotel or a storage unit, or storage, a bunch of storage units, like the company that has that. And then right here, you would put however many storage units were entered or however many hotel rooms were entered. All right, and then below that, you've got some check boxes that you can check. Offender suspected of using, so if they were suspected of any of that. Attributes, if any of those apply, you would just check the box. And then here's an important one, the weapon or force involved types. So it defaults to none. So maybe you're thinking someone got punched in the face, this is a simple assault, so there was no weapon or force involved. But what the state will want you to put in is not none for these. They would want you to put 40 personal weapon, hands, feet, teeth. If someone was punched, then you would need to put that as your weapon or force involved. All right, and you can enter up to 3 there. Down below that, you can do type of criminal activity. These are going to only apply to certain ones. And by the way, a lot of these things that we're talking about that only apply to certain UCR offense codes, like this weapon or force involved, you can only enter that for some UCR offense codes. Same thing with these types of criminal activity. These checkboxes can only be checked for certain UCR offense codes, but we have a list of those for you. So depending on the field, we can tell you this is the only thing that you can put a checkbox for. All right, and then the last one's gang information. All right, we'll save and close that. Come over to destroying public property. And if you look at this, this is an easy one because just looking at it, there's nothing that we need to add here. So we'll save and close and go down to property. Now we've got our destroyed property here, and you'll see it pulls in the property type loss, the property description, the value of the property, and then that's all we need. We're actually done with this segment already. Now it will point out if your officer forgets to put in a piece of property and you go back to the case and have to add it in, you can always add that in and then come here and click import without exiting this screen, and it'll let you just import that property in. Also, you can just manually add it yourself. These are all fields that are going to be on each of these segments, so you can do that with all of these. You can add it manually. Then you've got validate all, which I'll show you at the end, and validate segment if you want to just check the box to validate this specific segment. So no errors found. We'll go to the next one. All right, now we've got our victim right here. And you can see it pulls in all that information we've put, the age, sex, race, ethnicity, all of that. And then we can come down here. And this is where we would choose what UCR offense codes are connected to this victim. So we'll choose both of them. And we'll come to one other thing in here. You've got type of injury. And this is actually a required field for a simple assault. So what if I forget about that and come up here to try and save and close? The system will let me know type of injury must be put in for these codes. And you can see 13B is on that list, which is a simple assault. So we do have to add in a type of injury. Now, one tricky thing with this is that for a simple assault, you can only put apparent minor injury or none. And then for the rest of them, it would have to be something more serious. And then over here, we've got aggravated assault or homicide circumstances. So those are only going to apply if you have an aggravated assault or a homicide. Then you would choose what the circumstances that fit that are. All right, in the very bottom, you've got LEOCA information. And you'll see whenever I try and click on that, those don't open up. And that's because my victim is an individual and not a law enforcement officer. So if I check this and change it to law enforcement officer, now you can see I can choose these different boxes. But we'll change it back to individual and we'll hit save. Now we're done with that one. We'll go to offender and let's take a look at him. So it pulled in all the information for him and we're done with this one too. So now we'll go to victim offender relationship. We will have to add this depending on that. Victim offender relationship's always going to need to be added if your victim is an individual and it's a crime against a person or property. So we'll hit add, and we'll come here to put a relationship to the victim. So this would be, if we had more than one victim, we could check the drop down here and choose a second one. And then if we had more than one offender here, it would just pop down a list for each victim so that you can put a relationship for each offender to each victim. This is just one we're going to put victim was acquaintance. And you can always put in relationship unknown as well if they really didn't know each other at all. All right, and then the last thing we'll come in and put an arrestee. So this pulled in our arrest, and it pulls in actually all the information we need. But the only thing I do want to show you is right here. For type of arrest, you've got on view arrest, based on a warrant, or summoned or cited. And then below that, you've got the multi-arrest segment indicator. This one's kind of a confusing one. So this would be for if there was a chain of burglaries and you had 5 different cases open for those burglaries, but one person was arrested for all of them. You would come in here, put count arrestee as the first one, the first case that they were arrested for, and then for all the other 4, you'd put multiple. That way, it just lets them know that these are all an arrest that are related to the same, or these are all cases that are related to the same arrest. All right, save and close. And last thing I always say to do after you fill out all those, we're going to hit validate all up at the top. And that's going to check all of these segments to make sure there's no errors in the system. So no errors, and we are good. All right, now we'll move on to the next one. Again, we're going to do a larceny, theft, and a drug charge. But these next 2 won't be as detailed. We're going to just kind of jump through it. And I want to show you how quickly you can go through a NIBRS review. All right. So coming in here, we've got our face page. So we've got our common name, our county. We've got our larceny all other. That's going to be a NIBRS code of 23H. We've got our name, our victim, Mary Markison, and all that information added in there. You can also see that this time we've actually got her connected to that UCR offense code. And then we've got the stolen property. And in here, similar to the damaged property, we've got stolen as the category, which maps to stolen down here. Clothes and furs, which maps down here, and then the value right there. All right, now let's go into NIBRS and start this review. So everything we've already gone over on this page except cargo theft. If I try and save this now, it's going to say you actually do have to put yes or no since this is a 23H for larceny. So I'll hit no. I'm going to say this isn't a cargo theft, and we'll go to the offense. Oh, let me save it real quick. There we go. And we'll go to the offense. And now we're looking at this larceny all other. Just looking through here, we can add in a location type there since this one's just mapped to other unknown. But other than that, there's nothing that we want to look at. Completed attempted is already is correct. So we'll save that and go to the next step. So we've got our stolen property here. Stolen, description, 200. So everything is already added in there that we need. Now, let's say that this was recovered. So we've got a stolen property, and then NIBRS wants you to add in a separate recovered property. So we've got recovered, and then we would put in the same description and value that was recovered. So let's say we didn't get it all, we just got 150. And then we'll put the recovered date. So we'll just put today. You'll see up here there are other types of property loss. I do want to point out that some of these are going to apply to specific offense codes. So burned, you can only put that if you have an offense code of arson. Counterfeit forge, you can only put that if you have an offense code of counterfeit or forgery. Same thing with destroy vandalized. You can only put that if you have an offense code of vandalism. Now, you don't have to have specifically just that, because remember the simple assault we did at the beginning had a simple assault and a vandalism, and that's what made it so that we can put in this destroyed, damaged, vandalized property. All right, recovered and stolen, we already know that, and seized is going to be related to drugs. So we've got recovered, description, value of property, and date recovered, and we'll hit save. All right, now we'll go to victim right here, come up to check out our victim, and now we've actually already been connected to this UCR offense code, and there's nothing we have to do on this page. So save and close. We'll go to offender. Now, this one, the offender, we don't know. We don't know who it is. We don't know anything about the offender. So what we're going to do is come up and put in completely unknown offender. So we'll click on that button, and that'll automatically add someone with just blanks and everything. All right, and then we'll go down to victim-offender relationship. Now, remember I said you do have to add a victim-offender relationship for any victim that's an individual and a crime against a person or property. So we have to add it for this one. So we'll hit add, and a completely unknown offender is just going to automatically put in NA as the relationship. So go ahead and save. All right, no offender, so no arrestee. And we'll come up and hit validate all. All right, no errors found on that one. And finally, we'll move on to the last one. We've got our narcotics and drug paraphernalia case. So here we've got our common name and we've got our county. We'll go to incidents. We've got our drug narcotics violation and drug equipment violation. And you'll also notice if this crime is marked as a crime against society whenever we do our setup, and these two are, it'll automatically mark state as victim here for you. All right, and then we'll come to names. So we've got Marcus Marison, the arrested person, and we've got an arrest in here for the drug paraphernalia charge, or drug narcotics charge, sorry. And then right here, kind of like we were talking about with the property before, you have to have these two, narcotics and equipment, as a crime code there. That's a 35A and a 35B. And you have to have both of those to be able to put property of these types. So equipment, we'll look at that one. This one's easy. You put in evidence, drug narcotic equipment, and that maps down to seized and drug narcotic equipment. And then the value is going to be 1. So value of 1 just means you don't know the value. And that's how NIBRS sees it. That's how the FBI sees it, is 1 is always going to mean unknown value. And so for this drug narcotic equipment, you always have to have it valued at 1. Some other values that you may want to know are for identity documents, like a driver's license or something like that, or a fake ID even, that value is going to be 0. And then same thing for a credit card. Credit card will always be 0 in here. And that's because NIBRS wants you to report it as a stolen credit card and stolen money. So 2 separate things. So if someone steals $500 off someone's credit card, the credit card itself has no value. The card is $0 value. And then you put in a separate property category in here of money and put 500 as the value. All right, we'll save that and we'll come back up to drug narcotics. Now this one adds in some new fields. So once we put in category of evidence and property category or property type of drug narcotics, it'll actually add in weight, drug measurement type, and NIBRS suspected drug type. So we've got 2 grams of marijuana. So we put those in there, and we'll go ahead and hit save. Now we'll jump into our NIBRS review and start it up. Nothing to do on this page. Once we save, it lets us know that's fine. So next we'll go to offense. We've got both of these in here. The only thing I want to point out is that it automatically checks that possessing, concealing checkbox for you. And then also you can check that box for suspected of using if that applies. And we'll do that for the second one. And you can see that down there too. All right, we'll look at our property. So we've got our seized property, drug narcotic equipment of 1, drug narcotics of 0. We actually need to back that out and make it blank because they require you to put drug narcotics as blank for the value. And then your suspected drug type of marijuana, estimated drug quantity of 2, and then grams. So that all pulls from the case. All right, so for this one, this is a crime against society, so there's not an individual as a victim. We'll come up to add, and we need to add in society as a victim. And you can always remember that because once you come to this part, you've got crime against society, and it'll be marked yes for any that are. And that's all from the setup on the back end of your crime code. All right, and that's all we need to do for that one. Save that. And we'll go into offender. Nothing we need to do on this page. Everything just imported in. And we'll go to victim offender relationships. Now this is not a victim as an individual, so that means we don't need to add a victim offender relationship, and it won't even let you. If you try and click that box, it won't, it's grayed out and it won't let you add that. And then down below that, you've got the arrestee. So this pulls in all of the arrest information again. Save that. And last step, always hit validate all, and we've got no errors found. So we've done those 3 cases, got them finished, everything added, and validating at the very end. So the next step is going to be exporting our month of data to submit to the state. So for that, we'll go back to our home screen. And we'll go into case management. And this is different than other departments. Most departments have this as a separate tool, but we've got it in the mobile side for North Carolina. If we click on this NIBRS data extract, that'll bring us to this page. And you can see I've already been doing some testing with it. And you can come in, you would choose your date from and date to. So if we want to pull March, we would do March 1st to March 31st. The NIBRS schema version will tell you that whenever you're exporting it. Same thing for the other one. We'll let you know what you need to put there. And then it'll show what the file name is going to be. It's just going to be your ORI. This is my test one. And then the date that you're pulling it from. And then you can add comments here. I usually just say this is, you just put the name of the month that you're pulling. And I always put just a number beside it just to keep track if you have to pull a second one for resubmitting it. All right, and once you've got that, you'll hit extract. It'll let you know it either successfully extracts or it'll let you know if there's an error with one of them that you can check. And then you'll see down here, it pulls that file and it automatically downloads it for you. So then you would go to that zipped folder, and that's what you'd be able to submit to the state. And you would get, for the certification process, it's just going to be us working with you guys to submit to someone at the state. They may let you submit to a website, but after you get certified, you'll definitely be submitting to a website. All right, so that is all that we really needed to, that I wanted to go into with this, because I wanted you guys to understand the process, what you would need to do whenever we start the project, and what you would need to go through throughout the project, you know, putting in the crime code setup, the location code setup, and then going through and adding the data for each month. So what we are going to do now, I'm going to pull up our PowerPoint again. And we're going to go over to our next slide so that we can do Q&A. So again, like we kind of talked about before, this Q&A session, and I'm going to go to the next slide to show you guys. If you've got your screen open like this and you move your mouse around on the screen, you should see participants down at the very bottom. If you click on that, that'll bring up a sidebar over here. And then at the very bottom, you can click that raise hand button. And then we'll unmute you so that you can ask your question. And then we'll mute you again, and then you can either lower your hand or we can raise it or lower it for you. So let's go back to our Q&A screen. And I'm going to real quick introduce Jason Worth, if you are there. I saw that you joined, so I'm going to go ahead and make you a co-host, and you can say hey to everybody. All right, there you go. All right, and so we'll go ahead and do our Q&A session. If you have any questions, please click on that participants button at the bottom and go ahead and click on raise hand over on the side. All right, going once, going twice. Okay, looks like there are no questions. I am going to say that is because I covered the topic so well that it covered any and all questions that you guys may have. I know this is a lot of information for everyone, especially if you may not be using NIBRS right now, but this is a video that we'll be able to send out to you also and let you have access to in the future. And if and when you do become a NIBRS customer, then you'll be able to kind of use this video as kind of a way to remember these steps and kind of go through just a quick little tutorial of what you do have to do for simple assaults or larceny thefts or drug charges. All right, but we'll go ahead and wrap things up. You should expect to hear from us with an email in about a week to have access to this video. But if you guys do have any questions, you can always give us a call at 1-800-776-6783, or you can email us at support@arms.com with any questions that you might have. All right, but other than that, you guys have a good day. Everybody stay safe, and we will talk to you guys later. All right, thanks guys.